Long before comic book superhero movies were mainstream, the idea of adapting one for the big screen was a challenging and almost unrealistic undertaking. That is until Richard Donner's Superman premiered in 1978. The massive blockbuster starred newcomer Christopher Reeve as the Man of Steel, Marlon Brando as his father Jor-El, Gene Hackman as his arch-nemesis Lex Luthor, and Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. It spawned an entire movie franchise that still holds up today. To make Superman, a trio of really ambitious producers teamed up with a talented director, a great cast, and an unprecedented special effects team to create something unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. The result was a storied, intense filmmaking experience that really made us believe that man could fly. So let's take a look back at some behind-the-scenes trivia about the film and the people that brought Superman to life. Producers Ilya and Alexander Salkind were the first to begin putting together financing for the production of the movie, but they had no distributor. Eventually, they were able to convince Warner Brothers. The movie was a huge risk and needed a big budget to help bring it to life. When the Salkinds began the project, they wanted a high-profile writer to boost the film's profile, and decided on the Godfather author Mario Puzo. After spending some time with editors and DC Comics, Puzo got to work and produced a massive script spanning 2 films and 500 pages. The script would later be rewritten by David and Leslie Newman and Robert Benton to help tell the story that eventual director Richard Donner wanted to tell. The Salkinds considered several directors, including Sam Peckinpah from The Wild Bunch, William Friedkin from The Exorcist, and even Steven Spielberg, but ultimately decided on Guy Hamilton, who was best known at that time for directing James Bond films. Hamilton took the job, but then had to drop out after the production settled to shoot in England, which was a problem for Hamilton because he was an English tax exile, meaning he could only be in the United Kingdom for 60 days out of the year. The production would potentially take longer, so Hamilton had to drop out, and the search for a new director began. Desperate to find a new director, they turned to Richard Donner, who was fresh off the success of The Omen in 1976. He was offered $1 million to direct both Superman and Superman 2 back-to-back. When Donner stepped in, he wanted to do the movie justice and produce something that was legendary, rather than have it be a gratuitous action movie. Mario Puzo's original script was then rewritten with Donner's vision in mind. To further boost the film's profile, the producers went after major stars for key supporting roles and pursued Marlon Brando for the role of Superman's father, Jor-El. They flew to Brando's Los Angeles home to meet with him about the role. Brando wanted to do as little work as possible and was offered $4 million and a percentage of the gross earnings, which was massive for such little screen time. In the negotiations, Brando suggested that Jor-El could be more like an object, like a bagel or a green suitcase, with him providing only the voice. As Brando talked, producers were becoming very frustrated, so they leaned on Superman's legendary comic book history. They told him that every kid in the world knows what Jor-El looks like, and he looks like Marlon Brando. That was convincing enough for Brando to sign on. As usual, Marlon Brando was a nightmare to work with on Superman. He refused to learn his lines, telling Richard Donner that it was the only way to keep his performance authentic, so his lines had to be written on cue cards. And in one scene, they were actually read off of baby Kal-El's diaper as he was put into the escape pod. For Brando's 10 minutes of screen time, he earned in total about $14 million. After the huge success of Superman, Brando sued the studio for $50 million because he felt cheated out of the profits. Because of this, Brando does not appear in Superman 2. Finding their Superman was a little more difficult. Robert Redford, Clint Eastwood, and James Caan were all offered the role of Superman, but wanted too much money. Paul Newman was offered all of the lead roles. He was promised $4 million for whichever role he chose, but Newman was not interested in playing Superman, Jor-El, or Lex Luthor. Believing that a movie star in Superman's costume wouldn't be believable, Donner lobbied hard for an unknown. He eventually found his man in Christopher Reeve. Donner was impressed by Reeve's acting ability and believed he had the face to be Superman, but he was concerned about the actor's size. Superman had to be muscular to fill out the costume, and at the time they met Reeve, he was 6'4" and weighed only 170 pounds. Donner was skeptical, but Reeve assured him that he would bulk up. To help Reeve get into shape, the production turned to bodybuilder David Prowse, best known as the man in the Darth Vader costume in the original Star Wars trilogy, and they asked him to put as much muscle on Reeve as he could within 6 weeks. According to Prowse, Reeve gained 50 pounds by the time production started. Gene Hackman, who was cast as Lex Luthor, flatly refused to shave his head or wear a bald cap to play Lex Luthor. To get around this, Hackman's own natural hair was styled differently from scene to scene to give the appearance of him changing wigs. Hackman eventually relented and wore a bald cap in one scene when he is taken to prison by Superman. It is visible when he angrily rips off his wig to address the prison's warden. For the role of Lois Lane, several actresses were considered, including Leslie Ann Warren and Ann Archer, but Margot Kidder ultimately won the role by simply being herself. Donner said, "When I met her in the casting office, she tripped coming in, and I just fell in love with her." Kidder had a clumsy side, and on another occasion she injured her eye and was forced to act without contact lenses one day. Donner was so charmed by the way it made Lois bump into things and widen her eyes that he made sure Kidder continued to play the role without her contacts. Perhaps the most important part of making a movie about Superman was convincingly making him fly. Donner was adamant that old, crude methods of flying on camera, like the ones used in the Superman TV series, could not be used. It had to feel authentic, and that meant the special effects team had to essentially invent new methods of on-screen flight. The flying scenes were accomplished by using an optics expert named Zoran Perisic. He designed a system that used 2 zoom lenses interacting with each other to create a flight effect. Christopher Reeve was attached to a pole arm that was hidden, and he made the gestures and movements, and it's the camera and the projector that made him look like he flies through the air. For scenes in which he lands and takes off, Reeve was attached to wires, so he could be raised and lowered in and out of shots. Reeve was a trained pilot, and his knowledge of aerodynamics made his performance much more convincing. He was the real reason the flight scenes were so believable, and made audiences believe a man could fly. The new technology developed for the film was revolutionary for the time, especially since this was before computer-generated graphics. Speaking of the special effects, Superman's opening title sequence was so spectacular that it cost more to make than some entire movies of the time. Building off the success of the scrolling Star Wars titles, Superman needed to have an opening that announced the movie in a grand way. Richard Greenberg was hired to create a streaking title sequence that trailed off into space. Superman, up until this point, was the most expensive movie ever made, with a budget of $55 million. The star-studded cast, the special effects, and the opening and closing credits drove the cost way up. During the production of the movie, Richard Donner continually butted heads with the producers because of the chaotic production schedule. The original plan was to film 2 Superman movies simultaneously, but because of the immense number of sets and effects needed to achieve that, Donner had to break the film up into manageable pieces. To make it all work, 7 different shooting units were filming at the same time, with Donner driving back and forth between them on a golf cart. The ending of Superman was originally planned for the ending of the second movie. Superman flies into space and begins reversing Earth's rotation in order to turn back time. The effect impressed the studio so much, they insisted it be made a part of the first movie, in hopes it would help the movie be a hit. The original ending of Superman involved the Man of Steel throwing a nuclear missile into space, where it collides with the Phantom Zone prison containing General Zod and his cronies, freeing them and setting up the sequel. The schedule and budget always created tension, and eventually it led to Richard Donner not finishing the second film. As the first movie wrapped, they had essentially ran out of money to complete the second movie, so the studio decided to wait to see how successful the first Superman would do. When it was finally released in December 1978, it was a huge hit, raking in over $300 million worldwide. Richard Donner had completed about 75% of the second film before production began again to complete the sequel. By this time, the relationship between Donner and the Salkinds had soured. The budget and scheduling fights had become too much, and Donner decided not to complete Superman 2. Richard Lester, known for A Hard Day's Night, was brought in to complete the movie. Lester ended up reshooting and often rewriting parts of the second film. Richard Donner not only made audiences believe a man could fly, but proved that superheroes could appeal to adults as well as children. Superman pulled back the curtain, quite literally, at the film's start, to reveal a story that proved to be epic, and for Superman, one that has not been replicated since. Superman was nominated for 3 Academy Awards and received a Special Achievement Oscar for visual effects. It was inducted into the Library of Congress's National Film Registry in 2017. Make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and for more just like this, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so that you can be notified when I release a new video. Stay tuned for more episodes, and thank you so much for watching.